Hi, I'm Allie. Join me as I create this gemstone floral bracelet. There are a ton of variations that you can do, but the 2-hole beads really hold it in place so it's not flipping. So make sure you watch the video to see how that's done. If you need any materials, go ahead and look below the video in the product description. The little show more, the drop down for the details will give you links to all the materials used. Gather up your supplies and a great surface like a bead on it board, and let's get started. So to begin our little floral pattern here, we are starting with our DiscDuos, 11Os, and our 4mm gemstones. I'm working with 2 size 10 needles on one piece of dragon thread. So there's a needle on either side of this size 8 dragon thread. I've put 3 seed beads onto one of my needles, then my infinite clasp, and then 3 seed beads following. We're going to start a diagonal stitch pattern, which is just going to be a 4mm bead where we're going to take one needle from right to left and the other needle from left to right. So the thread crosses between the middle of the two, and you're going to pull that thread so you have equal amounts on either side, which will pull that bead down to the middle of the design. From here, we're going to start our center line before coming back down the project and adding in our outer line. So to start our interior line, we are going to do a repetition of our DiscDuo, followed by our 4mm round, followed by DiscDuo. So we're going to pick up one of our 11O seed beads, then we're going to pick up one DiscDuo, one 11O seed bead. On the other needle, 11O seed bead. Go through the second hole of that DiscDuo, and then pick up another 11O seed bead. Let those all fall down next to your 4mm round bead. And then we're going to repeat. So as we repeat here, it's that same thing again, just over and over for this center line. And we're going to pick up our 4mm bead, and we're going to take our 4mm bead and cross the threads through, one needle going right to left, the other left to right, letting it fall down next to our DiscDuo. And then as we do so, adding in our next DiscDuo bead, 11, DiscDuo, 11. If you find that it's a little bit hard for you to bead with both hands, you can always add a bunch of beads on one needle, like this here, in that rotation. And then what you can do is, afterwards, go through, poke that needle into your bead mat, grab the other needle, and go ahead and work on the second side, adding in your 11O seed bead then, going through the second hole of the DiscDuo, adding another 11 after that, and then going into that 4mm bead from the opposite direction. Giving a nice tight pull down, and that achieves the same thing while just working one needle at a time. Go ahead and build your whole baseline, so about 7 inches of this design will attach to the other side of our clasp, and then build our outer edge of the floral. Once you're done with the base line of this bracelet, and I want to show how pretty it is just having that baseline by itself. This is a great design even if you want to just have it as that single line and make a wrap bracelet. We're going to come back down and add our flowers to the outside. But before we do so, we're going to turn our thread around, coming back down the project. And to do so, we are adding in our seed beads. So I have both my needles here, and I've put 3 seed beads on both the right and the left needle coming out of my last 4mm bead. I'm going to pick up the tongue of my clasp. Now, you want to make sure that your bracelet, when it's facing up, that the tongue is facing so it goes into the clasp the exact same way. You don't want it facing upside down, or your project's going to sit somewhere in the middle. You're going to have to turn it. So I have it facing upward because my clasp is facing upward, and I'm going through that soldered loop. Now you might say, what about a wire guard? You can use a wire guard for sure, but because this loop of the clasp, which I'm crossing through just like the gemstone, is soldered, I don't have to worry about it. So I've got those 2 strands of thread going through the end, and again, we're just going to make sure that our loop is facing upward, and that when I look at my clasp, I can see that that tongue is going to fit perfectly around. You can bring it even around if you need to, into the end of my project. From here, I'm going to reinforce. So I'm going to go back through the seed beads, those 3 along the side, back through the clasp, crossing, and back through the gemstone. So you want one needle to exit one side of the gemstone, one needle to exit the other side of the gemstone. Once we're through the clasp and you're coming out either side of the 4mm gemstone here, we're going to start decorating the sides. And there's 2 different patterns we're going to use to decorate the sides. The first one is our floral pattern. And on the sides of each thread, when you're coming out that 4mm, you're going to add 11/0, 4mm, 11, 4, 11, both on the right and the left needle. Those threads then, just like we've been doing, are going to crisscross through our next 4mm gemstone. So you're going to skip over that first iris duo. The needle that's on the bottom is going towards the top. Needle that's on the top is going to take a trip through that same 4mm bead and go to the bottom. Once you have those, give a little tight yank. And now we're going to move to the interior of the DiscDuo. So right now the needle that it's in my hand, I'm going to go through the 11/0 that's already there. I'm going to grab one more of my 11/0 seed beads, one more 4mm, one more 11/0 seed bead, and go through the 11 that sits right after it. That 4 will just kind of decorate along the side here, and then through the next 4mm bead. From here, I'm in good shape then to start to do my floral design. So with the other needle now coming out back there, I'm going to go through the 11/0 along the side. Once I'm out the 11/0 along the side, I'm going to add 11, 4, 11, mirroring the other side, down through that 4mm bead. And while I'm there, at the same time, going through that 4mm bead below it. That puts just that little kind of diamond look on the side of the iris duo. And from here, then what we're going to do is go back to our floral design. So coming back to the floral design then, we'll do our collection of 5 beads through our next 4. Then we'll go into the interior here of the DiscDuo, add just one of our 4mm beads, and continue along the bracelet, alternating between the flower and the diamond. After you're finished going down and creating your flowers, the last thing you need to do is to reinforce the thread. Grab some Loctite glue, glue in your cab. I'm using a lighter purple to kind of bring out that purple color a little bit. But with your thread and needles, what you want to do is basically take one side of your thread and you're going to use that to reinforce. So I'm going up through the seed beads leading up to the clasp. I'm going through the clasp. Remember, it's that soldered end. Back down through the seed beads till you get to the bottom here. And then from here, back down through that center 4mm bead. I'm going to do the same thing one more time with the needle and thread from the other side. Once that needle and thread from the other side comes around to this side, simply tie off your thread ends and burn them down to complete your bracelet. I love the look of how simple this is. There's also a ton of variations that you can make, adding seed beads around the sides instead of gemstones, going in and out of the beads in different order, and just a nice baseline to create this gemstone flower. Thanks so much for joining me in this gemstone floral bracelet. I like showing the different ways that you can do the bracelet and different ideas for how many seed beads to put on the outside, and also just showing the great middle line. Remember, if you do any change-ups, go ahead and comment below. It helps other Potomac beaders that may be watching and build this amazing community. Remember, if you haven't yet, subscribe so you don't miss anything from us here at Potomac Beads. Thanks so much for watching, everyone, and stay tuned for more inspirational designs.